Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Football Betting Series here on YouTube Premier League edition. After a bit of a disappointing weekend, we did record a loss and our November record will finalise at 21 wins, 10 losses and 6 pushes for an overall profit of £48.51. So I suppose making a profit's not too bad, but taking a loss in the final week does hurt a bit. That does mean that our overall record stands at 74 wins, 27 losses and 14 pushes for a series profit of £464.31. I've got 5 picks in today's episode, so if you think I'm talking some sense, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. Without further ado, let's get into it. Our first selection sees 19th place Ipswich Town playing host to 17th Crystal Palace. At Ipswich, they were bested in their last game away to Nottingham Forest. Chris Wood's penalty was the difference between the two sides in what was a well-contested match. In terms of form, this result was Ipswich's first loss in their last 3, following the win against Spurs and the draw against Manchester United in Ruben Amorim's first game in charge. They host a Crystal Palace side who managed to rescue a draw late on against Newcastle. Munoz popped up in the 94th minute to cancel out Mark Guehi's own goal. With the late equaliser, you could be forgiven for thinking that Crystal Palace were the side under the cosh, but looking at the numbers tells a much different tale. Palace had 16 efforts to Newcastle's 1, created 5 chances to Newcastle's 0, and Newcastle's only goal contribution actually came from an own goal, as Anthony Gordon's cross was deflected past the goalkeeper, and maybe Oliver Glasner will see that as 2 points dropped instead of 1 saved. In terms of form, whilst the draw was a decent result, Palace have not won in their last 4 Premier League matches. When we look at the head-to-head record, it has been 7 years since the last competitive matchup between these two sides, a game which took place in the EFL Cup with Crystal Palace winning 2-1 thanks to a James MacArthur brace. So I don't think there's really anything we can read into here. My prediction for this game is that both sides will still view this match as a very winnable game in order to avoid relegation this season. Games like this, we could see 2 different styles of match play out, a cagey affair with more emphasis on not losing compared to winning, or what I think will happen is a more open and free-flowing game where both sides try their best to outplay and ultimately outscore their opponent. So I'm looking at goals. Ipswich Town have seen both teams to score in 4 of their last 5 Premier League matches, as well as 4 of their last 5 home games in the Premier League. Crystal Palace, on the other hand, they've seen both teams to score in each of their last 2 Premier League games, and in 4 of their last 5 matches across all competitions. Additionally, the Eagles have seen both teams to score in 7 of their 8 away matches in the Premier League. That record dates back to April. In terms of the head-to-head record, it doesn't really matter, but if you do care, both teams to score also occurred in the 2-1 Palace win, and for these reasons I'm going to back both teams to score for a full stake in the first bet of the episode. Our second selection sees 16th place Leicester City playing host to 14th place West Ham. And Leicester were beaten comfortably in their last match against Brentford. Buonanotte actually put the Foxes in the lead, but this was a short-lived advantage. Visser equalised 4 minutes later before a Kevin Schade hat-trick killed the contest, Brentford winning by 4-1. In terms of form, this does mean no win in 6 for Leicester, and they've lost their last 3 Premier League games in a row. They host the West Ham side, who also lost their last match against Arsenal. The first half saw all of the goal action, and the only real positive for West Ham is that they did not give up. They were 4-0 down at one point, but did show some fight and battle to get back in the game, scoring twice in quick succession to bring the scores to 4-2. But it was very much a case of too little, too late. 5-2 the final score to the Gunners, with all 7 goals coming in the first 45 minutes. In terms of form, it's a bit confusing for West Ham. 1 win, 1 draw and 1 loss in their last 3 Premier League games. Means we're looking at quite an inconsistent side here. When we look at the head-to-head record, it was Leicester that picked up the win last time out, 2-1 in May of 2023. Goal contributions from Harvey Barnes and Wes Fowles earned 3 points for Leicester. Longer term, this win saw Leicester extend their unbeaten run against West Ham to 3 in a row now. My prediction for this game is, I think it would take a very brave person to pick a side here. Leicester and West Ham have been very inconsistent of late, and I'm not that brave, but I do think we're in for goals here. Leicester have seen over 2.5 goals in 5 of their last 6 Premier League matches, and also 5 of their last 6 home games in the Premiership. Whereas West Ham, they've seen over 2.5 goals in 5 of their last 7 league games, and in 2 of their last 3 away trips. When we look at the head-to-head record, 7 of the last 8 meetings have seen over 2.5 goals scored, and that does include each of the last 4 games that took place at the King Power. All those numbers are leading me towards backing over 2.5 goals for a full stake in bet number 2. Our third selection sees 15th place Everton playing host to 18th place Wolves. And Everton were well beaten in their last match against Manchester United, both Rashford and Xerxes scoring braces in a 4-0 win for the Red Devils. Everton were second best in the contest as they did lose out on every major win predictor. However, 4-0 may be a wee bit harsh on the Toffees as United only generated 0.73 XG. In terms of form, this does mean no win in the last 5 Premier League games for Everton. They host a Wolves side who were bested in their last match against Bournemouth. They were behind after just 3 minutes courtesy of Kirkes' strike, and despite a brief reprieve of an equaliser, the Cherries ultimately overpowered the visitors, with the scores finishing 4-2. In terms of form, this result did end a brief 4-game unbeaten streak for Wolves, and consequently they have not quite found their way out of the relegation zone just yet. When we look at the head-to-head records, Wolves won the reverse fixture by 3-0 last December. Goals from Kilman, Dawson and Kuna saw the Black Country sides pull off a resounding win. And this result did make it back-to-back wins for Wolves over their hosts. They're also unbeaten in their last 6 games against Everton, winning 5 of these encounters. My prediction for this game is that after some early season trouble, Wolves seem to have found their stride, and we'll see Everton as another side in which they can pick up more points against, especially given the very impressive head-to-head record. With all that being said, Everton are very solid at home. They're unbeaten in their last 5 matches at Goodison, and only losing 1 of the last 7 league games. All of that considered, I would feel a lot more comfortable backing Wolves in this one, but in recognition of Everton's handsome home record, I'm going to avoid backing the away side outright, and instead I'm going to lay Everton for a full stake in this. Our fourth match sees 20th place Southampton play host to 3rd place Chelsea, and Southampton picked up a point on the road in their last game away to Brighton. Saints did allow the first goal as Matoma caught a bouncing ball in the box, and Southampton could have easily gone 2 behind in the first half as Ruta hit the post. However, they did hold on and managed to turn in a much better performance in the second period. They equalised through Flynn Downs quite early on, and Cameron Archer thought he had won the game for Southampton, but VAR did rule this offside. So honours even, and the game finishes 1-1. In terms of form, whilst a draw away from home isn't a bad result against a side in the top 4, it does mean that Southampton are now winless in their last 3 Premier League games, and they do remain bottom of the table for yet another week. Chelsea added another win to their tally against Aston Villa. Jackson got Chelsea off to the best possible start as his left-footed strike kissed the post as it beat Martinez in the Villa goal. Enzo added a second in the 36th minute, which effectively ended the contest, and if it wasn't over at that point, it definitely was when Palmer scored the third late on in the second half to make it 3-0, to make it a 3-0 win for the Blues. In terms of form, this does mean that Chelsea have won each of their last 3 matches, and they are unbeaten in their last 6 across all competitions. When we look at the head-to-head records, the last match between these two sides saw Southampton bust a few accas, as they did manage to win 1-0 away at Stamford Bridge. James Ward-Prowse scored the only goal in the game just on the stroke of half-time. Despite Chelsea dominating the match, they were unable to find the back of the net, and the Saints claimed a precious 3 points. This result does mean that Southampton have won both of the last 2 encounters against Chelsea, as they also won at St Mary's in August of 22 by 2-1. My prediction for this game is that Chelsea are the much stronger side here. Their form is a lot more convincing than Southampton, and man for man they are the better side. The only thing that gives me a little bit of pause for thought is Chelsea's packed schedule, as this match comes 3 days after the Aston Villa game and 4 days before the vital Spurs match, so there is a chance of complacency or rotation in this one. However, Southampton are similarly depleted. They've been decimated with not only injuries but also suspensions, as they're going to miss Flynn Downs, Harwood Bellis and the young star Tyler Dibbling for this match. So how they're going to get any sort of positive result, I have no clue. And it's for this reason that I'm going to back Chelsea to win, but only for a half stake in this one. Final game sees 13th place Bournemouth playing host to 7th place Tottenham Hotspurs, and Bournemouth they beat Wolves in their last match in large part down to Kluivert's hat-trick. Wolves were punished for a number of mistakes and they gave away 3 penalties in the game, a Premier League record. Stats-wise, it was never really in doubt. Bournemouth had 3.19 XG to Wolves' 0.45, and if you're playing a side that gives you 3 penalties, well, you're going to go on to win the game. In terms of form, this result did break a 2-game losing streak for the Cherries, and they're now back to winning ways. They play a Spurs side who are coming off a draw in their last game. After a fairly poor first half, it was actually Spurs that got the breakthrough against the run of play thanks to Brennan Johnson. Tom Kearney then levelled the scores just after the hour mark with his first goal of the season, and his cameo off the bench didn't last very long at all, as he was then sent off in the 83rd minute, so a goal and a red card in his 21 minutes played. However, Spurs were unable to make their advantage count in the dying embers of the game, with the scoreline finishing 1-1. In terms of form, this result added to a frustrating run for Spurs. They have back-to-back draws and just one win in their last 5 games across all competitions. In terms of the head-to-head record, Spurs won the last match pretty handedly. Goals from Sarr, Son and Richarlison had Spurs sitting pretty before a consolation strike was added by Alex Scott. 3-1 was the final score. And this result made it back-to-back wins for Spurs over the Cherries, and they're also unbeaten in 5 of the last 6 meetings in recent years. My prediction for this game is that both sides come into this match with mixed form, to say the least. You never quite know what you're going to get with Bournemouth or Spurs, so I'm going to avoid picking a side here, but I think we're in store for goals. Bournemouth have seen over 2.5 goals in each of the last 4 matches and in 3 of their 4 home games this season, whereas Spurs, they saw over 2.5 goals in each of the last 6 matches ahead of the Fulham game. When we look at the head-to-head records, 3 of the last 4 matches have seen at least 3 goals scored. So with all that in mind, I'm going to back over 2.5 goals for a full stake in the final bet of today's episode. So there we have it, 5 picks in today's episode, starting off on the 3rd of December. Ipswich Town versus Crystal Palace, we're going to back both teams to score, odds of 1.76, a £40 stake to return £30 and 40 pence. Also on the Tuesday, Leicester are at home against West Ham. We're backing over 2.5 goals, odds of about 4 to 5 or 1.79, a £40 stake to return £31.60. Moving on to the Wednesday, Everton versus Wolves, we're laying the home side at odds of about 1.83, a £40 stake to return £33.30. On the South Coast, we're going to back the away side Chelsea to beat Southampton, odds of 1.44, a half stake of £20 to return £8 and 80 pence. Wrapping things up on the 5th of December, Bournemouth versus Spurs, we're going to take over 2.5 goals, odds of 1.46, a £40 full stake to return £18 and 40 pence. So, on the midweek, we're going to risk £180 to hopefully pick up as much as £122 and 53 pence. Will we do so? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to tune into the next episode. But if you have made it to this point in the video, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. And as always, have yourself a lovely day.